Unfortunately, the run ends on a whimper, for Commander Yammark's stage unfortunately has a lot of impossible Reploids. Once again, the big problem here is camera locks. I was actually worried about this stage going into it because even 100% speedruns take forced deaths in order to get around the camera locks in this stage. But what I thought this would mean for the playthrough was forced playthroughs of the stage over and over, similar to Rainy Turtloid. Instead, they essentially make every single Reploid in the first half of the stage completely impossible to infect, which is around 8. But the camera locks aren't even the most insulting part about this stage. There's 3 Reploids coming up that were actually put in immediate danger by the designers, but for some bizarre reason, these nightmares are programmed to only go after these 3 Reploids and otherwise don't move at all. If this wasn't a thing, I might have been able to barely spawn the nightmare without triggering the camera lock, but that's not the case. We're stuck in this section now. So essentially what this means is that these nightmares are only usable for their intended purpose. There's no more nightmares in the stage after this point, so the only hope to kill any more Reploids is the top path, which is an ordeal in and of itself. But as a bit of an aside for a second, I mentioned last video that I thought that getting the blade armor was actually impossible in this playthrough. The reason for this is that the Dr. Light capsule, as I'll show right here, stops you directly on top of the Reploid, and for a while I couldn't figure out how to get around this. Fortunately, I discovered that if you place an ice burst right here and jump off of it, you can just barely make it over the capsule's activation range and get to it from the other side, which does allow you to complete the blade armor. Unfortunately, it isn't very helpful. In the end, I found out that really the only thing the blade armor does for you is enable that one Reploid in Wolfang stage to be killed, and that's about it. After this, you can get up to the top path using either Ice Burst or the blade armor. It doesn't actually matter. It'll play out in the same way. And now finally, after neglecting it for this entire challenge run, I get to use Yammark option again to kill these stupid bugs that I hate. Their scissor projectiles are the main problem here because they will chase after you. They do not despawn easily, and they deal a lot more damage than you'd expect, so you can't take very many of them. Anyways, the top path is home to the only other Infector Nightmare in the stage, and fortunately it actually behaves normally. But there are some other problems in this section that need addressing. For some reason, the walls that lead back down to the main path cannot actually be wall jumped on. And the shaft is pretty long, so as you might expect, the nightmare is just going to despawn if you just fall down the shaft. So get ready for my good old buddy Magma Blade canceling after we get these 2 completely free Reploids. Quick speed up here because my past self couldn't hurry the hell up! And here is why I needed Magma Blade. Just to get this Reploid all the way down to the shaft of the final section, because there's no nightmares there otherwise. Fortunately, this nightmare does not shoot at you, otherwise this would have been really terrible. It is a bit unforgiving though, and that if you do fail, you have to restart the stage. But once you get the timing down for Magma Blade, and trust me, I really did get it down after a while, it's not too bad at all. It's just extremely obtuse and looks really weird in footage. You kind of get the picture though, just Magma Blade over and over to get this guy all the way down, and eventually you'll get him down, and you'll be able to enter the final section with a nightmare following you. After that, the only thing standing between you and the sweet, sweet death of another Reploid is the stupid nightmare bugs. Yeah, they can be permanently killed with Yammark option, but Yammark option has a pretty big hitbox, and nightmares are just as vulnerable to Yammark option as the nightmare bugs. So you kind of have to sit here and tank all of the slicers, which, as I mentioned before, deal quite a lot of damage. It definitely doesn't help matters that the blade armor's charge shot is absolutely terrible, so eventually I just switched back to the Falcon armor. After this, it's wash, rinse, and repeat for all 4 of the Reploids in this section. I actually just ended up going to Rainy Turtloid stage and farming sub-tanks because the slicers do so much damage, and I did not want to do any weird finagling around with Yammark option or any other weapon. I just decided to tank everything. I did try, as you're gonna see shortly, and Guard Shell is probably the best option for this, but it's still way easier to just tank everything. Guard Shell is kind of a liability since it can hit the nightmare too. Kind of apologies for showing all of this footage of the magma blade buffering, and it's honestly kind of an epileptic hazard, but I just want to hammer home the point how long and how stupid this strategy is. That's the beautiful irony of this challenge. Something that seems really simple and just sounds like you playing bad actually ends up being a lot harder than just rescuing all the Reploids. By the way, something to keep in mind is that between all these jump cuts, you're also missing like 5 to 7 minutes of me farming sub-tank energy in Rainy Turtloid stage, so truly you're missing out on all the fun here. If you can't tell, that's a joke. Don't do this challenge yourself, ever, unless you think you're better than me. And I mean, would you ever be better than me, the Mega Man X Master? That's it for Commander Yammark stage. If you're smart, you probably will realize that Blaze Heatnix not being its own video is a really bad sign, and it's because Blaze Heatnix, like he does for most other X6 challenges, ruins everything. The donuts are actually a huge problem in this challenge, but not for the reason you might think. Because the donuts take up all of this stage's content, bar the one area after this, there's a lot of boss doors, which are basically just fancy camera logs, which means you can't guide nightmares everywhere in this stage because they can't go through boss doors. This severely limits your options in this stage in terms of getting any of the Reploids killed at all, and I'm just gonna spoil it right now, there are no Infector nightmares in the first place in the area leading to the secret exit, which locks out a total of 9 Reploids by that section alone. And that's not even including the other Reploids scattered throughout the level. There's a couple that are impossible just because there aren't nightmares that can infect the Reploids in this section, like the first one, where there just aren't any nightmares in the first place. So that first Reploid is completely invincible. The only actual level part of this stage does actually have an Infector to work with, but this section's actually really hard because the flame pillars hit ridiculously hard, so you have to be on top of your dodging game. At the end of the day, this isn't super difficult, and it only took me a couple minutes to get it, but it definitely is more challenging than some of the other babysitting missions in the rest of this challenge. If the flame pillars didn't hit as hard, this would be a piece of cake, but you have to be pretty careful to actually make it through relatively unscathed. Enjoy the challenge while it lasts, though, because this is the last Reploid in the game that actually requires effort to get infected, that is actually possible. I thought that the Reploid in this donut section might have been possible to get, but unfortunately the trigger for the donut spawning and filling up its health bar extends up really high and will catch you before you can actually get the nightmare down a sufficient amount. Even Magma Blade canceling isn't really going to do anything, and of course, there's our good old friend Mr. Camera Lock there. Here's an easy one, accidentally died because I pressed the wrong button, but it still counted, so hooray. This one is not possible because none of the nightmares in this section are infectors, so woohoo! And finally, once again, this one is super nasty casually, which makes it super easy to just get killed, just let it happen, and that's basically it. And well, to repeat what I said earlier, there are no infectors in the secret exit area, so you're basically screwed. In fact, one of the other reasons that I played this challenge on Extreme Mode is because when I played a casual Extreme Mode playthrough, I thought that I saw this upcoming nightmare go for this Reploid, as if it was an infector, but apparently I misremembered. To rub salt on the wound, there's actually a Reploid blocking your path coming up here that locks you out of getting the shadow armor and an extra sub-tank on this playthrough. I even went ahead and checked and rescued that Reploid to see if there were any infectors past here. There aren't. They're all non-infectors. So, again, you're just screwed. Since you can get the blade armor, you can beat the game without rescuing any Reploids, but not in the stylish way. And that's it for the Infectable challenge. This was interesting, and I certainly know more about X6 than I did before. The total that you can kill is 98. Missing ones are 4 in Rainy Turtloid, 7 in Commander Yammark, 12 in Blaze Heatnix, and 6, maybe 3 if the RNG loves you, in Blizzard Wolfang. Don't do this yourself unless you hate yourself. Anyways, next up is the X7 Kill 'Em All No, I'm not doing that.